Hello my fellow gearheads, and thank you for tuning in. In this video I'd like to talk about a very interesting feature inside the TONEX software. Because if you take any tone model like the one I have captured here, it allows you to either turn off the cab or replace it with one of your own impulse responses. And I think that's a very interesting feature because if you know the way these models are captured, then you know that you basically take an entire signal chain and capture it all at once. So in this instance, I took a pedal, an amplifier, and then a cabinet and a microphone, and that got captured all in one. So how exactly does the TONEX modeler distinguish between the coloration of the amplifier and of the cabinet? Because as you might know, a cabinet actually generates a really complex filter for your sound. My theory is that they actually don't distinguish between the amp and the cab. Instead, they probably use an inverse impulse response and apply that to the signal to basically take away what they consider to be a cab response. So that makes me wonder, if I take two captures of the same amp, one with a cabinet and one without the cabinet, would they sound the same if I apply the same impulse response to those amplifiers? Well, I'm gonna put that to the test in this video. So first I've made two captures of the exact same amplifier using the exact same settings. And fortunately I have a 2-note torpedo live that allows me to do that. So the first capture is of the Marshall 5210 boosted with an SD1 using a cab IR in the torpedo live, and the second is using the same amp, same pedal, same settings, but instead capturing the dry signal coming out of the torpedo live. I've then created 3 tracks within my DAW using those models. The first track is using the model with the full signal chain, so the amp and the cab as they were captured. The second track is using that same model but with the cab disabled, and then the torpedo wall of sound plugin added using the same settings for the cab. So the cab is basically similar to the one in the capture. And the third one is using the model captured without the cab and then adding the cab in the torpedo wall of sound plugin. So let's test how these sound. And I do apologize in advance, there will be a couple of glitches when I'm switching between the tracks, and it's probably due to my ACO driver going into OBS, but stick with me. So after listening to these tracks back to back a couple of times, I've noticed that the first track and the third track sound very similar, and that is to be expected because they basically use the exact same signal chain. The only difference being the cab being inside the capture in the first track and the cab being added in another plugin on the third track. The second track, however, and that's the one where we take the full capture, disable the cab, and then add it through a plugin, sounds vastly different. It's a lot more boxy, a little bit nasal, and it has a bit more mid-range. It's still usable, but it's a different sound. By the way, if you're interested in these tone models, I'll put a link to my ToneNet profile in the description below. So with this test, I hope I demonstrated to you that when you capture a full rig, so including the cab, you do not get the same sound by disabling the cab than if you capture that same rig without the cab. They will sound very differently. Again, it's not unusable, but be aware of that. So if you really care about the tone that your amplifier generates and you wish to use different impulse responses with it, you would be better off to actually capture it without a cab instead of disabling it in your existing tone model. I'm also very interested if other products on the market have the same feature, like the Camper Profiler or the Quad Cortex, because I've never worked with those. This is the only product I've worked with so far. So if you have that experience and you know if they allow you to disable the cab on your captures, please let me know in the comments below. So if this video has been helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. If you're interested in other TONEX content, then also check out my other video in which I test the speed of the TONEX modeler using a gaming PC and an RTX graphics card. I'd like to thank you for watching and I hope you have a very nice day.